Hi everyone, and welcome to our second video about competitions, part 8 of our teacher series on running an amazing debating club. So today I want to think quite specifically in this video about BP debating competitions in the UK that are run by organisations like ours or universities, and kind of what they look like, because they are quite cookie cutter and they are quite formulaic, and therefore we can reasonably tell you what to expect from them, how best to prepare your kids, and how to evaluate if it was a good or bad competition, and therefore if you want to attend it again, which is useful. So, what to expect on the day of a BP competition? Most of these competitions will start with some briefings. Sometimes the briefings are pre-recorded and sent out. If that's the case, please make your kids watch them and watch them yourself. They are useful, it saves time, just be prepared. The briefings ideally shouldn't give you or your students any information you don't already have. Speakers briefings are designed as an absolute fail-safe. Your kids should be familiar enough with debate, with what's going to happen in the day, that they don't need a speakers briefing. And same for the equity briefing. The draw will come up for round one. Sometimes draws can look a little bit confusing the first time you see them. It can just look like a bunch of gobbledygook on a board. Just take a second and scan over it. You'll almost certainly get it. But if you don't ask someone to explain the draw, like a CA, they'll point it out and it'll make sense. Mostly, the way that draws look is that from left to right, they go room, opening government team, opening op team, closing government team, closing op team, judges. So you just find the team name, like Hogwarts A, and if you look up the column, it'll tell that team what position they're in, OG, OO, CG, CO. If they look left, they'll see what room they're in. If you look right, they'll see what judges they have. If your kids are struggling to read the draw, or you are, and the CAs or the convener says, does everyone know where they are? And you don't, speak up. Don't wait for them to announce the motion and for everyone to be away prepping for the debate, and then ask. Ask immediately. Once everyone knows where they are, they'll announce the motion. Once the motion is announced, debates start 15 minutes from that point. Doesn't matter if your room is a 10-minute walk away or a 30-second walk away. Doesn't matter if you don't know where you are, if you don't understand the motion. Debates start in 15 minutes. At 15 minutes, the debate starts. The kids have to all be in the room and ready to go. In most IRL competitions, the opening government team are allowed to prep in the room the debate will happen in. Everyone else is expected to not be in that room to give them the room to prep in. Therefore, other teams should prep in like corridors and stairwells and stuff. The debate happens. You're always welcome to watch a debate as a teacher. Then the kids and you will be sent out while the judges deliberate. Then the judges will invite the kids back in. Whether this is online, they might chuck them out of a Zoom breakout room or whatever, invite them back. They'll give the call, the rankings, some feedback, and then send the kids back to the auditorium where round two will happen. There's usually 3 or 4 rounds in a BP debating competition if it's a weekend comp, and then there's usually a break, by which you just mean announcing the finalists. Sometimes nowadays there are multiple finals, a gold final. If there's like gold, silver, bronze finals, gold just means the first 4 teams on the rankings. The silver final is the teams that came 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Novice final, sometimes they'll look at all the rankings and then some teams will be novice and they'll take the first 4 novice teams and put them in a novice final. Novice criteria changes from competition to competition. It can be first competition to first year of debating. Novice finals are really good things for competitions to have. If a final has one final, if a competition only has one final, it should obviously just be a gold final, first 4 teams. I think if it has 2 finals, it shouldn't be gold and silver, it should be gold and novice. And then if it has got 3, gold, novice, silver, bronze. But I think novice finals are really important. So something to keep in mind when you first go to BP debating competitions is that BP is a very esoteric form of debating. I mean, lots of debating formats are. What that means is that your intuitions about who won a debate may be wildly off because the debating criteria that is being applied to the rankings is not one of intuition or natural persuasiveness or audience engagement. It's a very specific, quite unique marking criteria, and if you don't know it, if you aren't very familiar with it, then it will be hard for you to accurately assess a call. As such, I would say just don't have overriding confidence in your call of a debate to the extent where you think any judge that disagrees with you is definitely wrong, because you might be less experienced than the judge in this particular format. Bear in mind that when someone says you came first in this BP debate, we're not saying you gave the best objective speech. We're saying that under the specific rules of BP, you came this position. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you first go to debating competitions, you can be blown away sometimes by how good some students are. Not always, but sometimes you see some students and you're like, wow, this is incredible at how are these kids so good. Sally Rooney's got the author who previously was a debater, a very, very good debater, has got a really beautiful article, I guess you call it, and I think it's the Dublin Review. She talks about debating. And there's a part of it I really like where she talks about how the mechanics of beautiful public speaking are not lastingly mysterious. And what she means by this is that when she first saw beautiful debaters, like just with poise and passion and articulacy and confidence and fluency, she was like, how are these people doing this? But when you watch it long enough, you're like, oh yeah, they're doing that, and oh yeah, there's a trick here, and basically you figure out that it's like anything else. It's not nearly as impressive as it looks at first glance. Um, as such, you may see some students just crushing it and think, wow, I mean, I know I'm not even close. My students aren't even close. I mean, this is like NFL versus flag football here. They might not be as far ahead of you and your students as you think. They might be. Some students are really good, but they might not be. So don't be too disheartened if you see some kids who are awesome. You might be surprised by how good your students can get. And of course, if there are some kids who are just amazing, yeah, like there are some kids who are amazing at violin, amazing at football, amazing at, I don't know, speed math. Like in any hobby, in any game, in any sport, there are some people who are just exceptional. And so it's important to understand from your and your students' perspective that you can't just rock up to the debate world and give it the good old college try and expect to be meaningfully competing with the best in the world at this game. It is really important that you do your best to prepare your kids for the first BP debating competition. And there's a few things that I always try to hammer into my students before I go or before I take them. One is that the kids should know the basic rules. Not the ins and outs of how to win a tournament, but basic things like how long are speeches, what is protected time, how many teams are in a debate, what are the positions called, like what is opening government. Knowing those basics is really, really important to them just feeling comfortable and being able to give their best efforts in the competition. If they don't know if opening up means they speak first, second, third, or fourth, or they don't know if government are for or against the motion, or they think it's a 2 minute speech, that really sets them up to have quite a hard day. So make sure they know the basic rules and ideally have done a couple BP practice debates at school. If you don't know the rules and the format of BP, invest a little bit of time in finding out and feeling comfortable with it. You can watch BP debates on YouTube. There's lots of guides online. Just get familiar enough with it yourself that you can help your students. Also, please tell them to never, under any circumstances, take more than one POI. Just trust me on that. Tell them to use their prep time effectively. A lot of kids faff about in the 15 minutes and then are like, how on earth do these kids speak for a full 5 minutes? I only had 30 seconds worth of arguments. It's because they use the 15 minutes effectively and you spent 15 minutes being like, oh my god. So that's a good piece of advice. And lastly, I think it is really important to set expectations quite realistically as a teacher. Your kids are probably going to get thumped. At the very least, they're not going to win. BP is esoteric, it's complex. Some kids who participate in these competitions are amazing. And if you're like, yeah, well, some of my students are real smart, a lot of students who do debating are really smart, and a lot of them are coming from top schools. You can be a smart kid in a decent school and go along to a debating competition and find out that you're one of the least intelligent kids there because the kids that do debating, because it's so tough, are often kids who are really gifted from really good schools. So your kids are probably going to struggle when they go to debating competitions. Now, that doesn't mean tell them, you're going to get thumped, kids. Like, good luck, lol. Um, bring a crash helmet. But at the same time, if your kids are kind of on the bus on the way there or on the train, like, oh yeah, I think we've got a really good chance of winning. Like, wouldn't it be cool if all of us got to a final? It can be worth just sort of being like, remember, guys, you know, if this was your first ever football tournament and you'd never played a proper football match, you just kicked the ball about with some mates, would you expect to win the football tournament? Just make them aware that maybe obviously if it's a novice tournament, then this might be different. But if they're going to like a real debate competition, like Cambridge schools or something, which and I mean they would be going to a regional round, but even then, they're probably not going to wipe the floor with everyone, and it's good for them to know that going in. So that's the video. Next time we're going to look at assessing competitions. So essentially, if you've gone to a competition, figuring out was it a good one or a bad one or a middling one. Um, Not all competitions are worth your while, and some competitions are worth prioritizing because they're so good, and it's worth you being able to assess them. So we're going to have a chat about that next time, but until then, I hope you found the video helpful. Obviously, if you've got any questions, comments, suggestions, whatever, requests, please get in touch. We're here to help. That's why we exist. And until we see you next time, keep debating, keep arguing with your kids, and take care. Bye now.